Okay, so next chapter of Kaspar. So far, Kaspar is in the hotel and he's being looked after by John Trott and his new friend Lizzie Beth. Alright, let's see what happens next. Everything after that seemed to happen quite suddenly and in very quick succession. It was a quiet weekend at the hotel with fewer guests around. There were no big dressy dinners, no grand balls, no smart parties. All of us who worked there preferred it like this, even if the days did drag a bit. Everyone was a bit more relaxed. I liked the weekends anyway, because Kaspar and I usually saw more Elizabeth then. She'd be bored out of her mind downstairs and would often sneak up to see Kaspar, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day, leaving me a note each time. I finished work earlier on a Sunday, so she'd usually be up there in my room with Kaspar waiting for me when I got back. Sometimes she'd steal away some scones and cake, hiding them in a napkin. She was always saying I was too thin and needed feeding up. And since I was always more than a little hungry after work, I didn't argue with her. We were sitting there one Sunday evening, tucking into some delicious fruitcake, when I heard a voice in the corridor outside. It was Skullface. Remember, Skullface is his boss. It was Skullface. She was talking to Mary O'Connell, and she was not in a good mood. That idiot Johnny Trott, is he in? I haven't seen him, Mrs. Blaze, Mary told her. Honest. The footsteps came closer and closer, the bunch of keys rattling louder with every step. Skullface was ranting now. Do you know what he's gone and done? Well, I'll tell you, shall I? He's only used a black brush on Lord Macaulay's brown boots. There's black all over them, and who gets the blame? Me. Well, I'll have his guts for garters, I will. Where is he? I don't know, Mrs. Blaze. Honest to God, I don't. Mary was doing her best for me. The footsteps were right outside my door now, and there was I with Elizabeth in my room and Kaspar cleaning himself on her lap. All she had to do was open the door and I'd get the sack for sure. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. I was praying that somehow, anyhow, Mary would prevent her from opening that door. It was at this very moment that Kaspar chose to stop washing his paws and spring out of Lizzie-Beth's lap, yowling in fury. It wasn't a gentle meow. This was his wailing war cry. Meow! Sorry, Ziggy. Meow! Meow! Sorry. It was shrill and horribly loud. For a moment or two there was silence outside the door. Then, "A cat! As I live and breathe, a cat!" cried Skullface. "Johnny Trott has got a cat in his room. How dare he?" Oh, hello, Busby. Sorry, was that noise frightening? How dare he? How dare he? It's against the rules. My rules. I looked aghast at Elizabeth. Without a moment's hesitation, she picked up Kaspar and dumped him unceremoniously in my arms. "In the wardrobe," she whispered. "Get in the wardrobe, quick." Once in there, I crouched down, stroking Kaspar frantically to calm him down, to stop him from yowling again. Then I heard something I simply couldn't believe. Kaspar was yowling again, from outside the wardrobe, from my room. Yet he couldn't be, because he was with me. Strange. He was in my arms, and he definitely wasn't yowling. Yet he was yowling. I could hear him. In my panic and confusion, it took several minutes before I realised what was going on. Lizzie-Beth was out there in my room and mimicking Kaspar perfectly. Mary told me afterwards, she told everyone afterwards, exactly what had happened. Apparently, Elizabeth opened the door to Skullface, yowling and wailing at her just like Kaspar. Skullface just stood there gaping at Lizzie-Beth. She could not believe her eyes. It was a while before she could speak at all. My mouth opened and shut like a goldfish, Mary said. Then Skullface gathered herself a little. "What on earth, young lady," she said at last, "what on earth do you think you're doing up here in the servants' quarters, young lady? It's strictly out of bounds." Lizzie-Beth yelled back at her. "Meow! I'm a cat," she said. "Meow! I was chasing a mouse and he ran in here. Meow! So I ran after him and I caught him." I'm very good at catching mice, you know. I gobbled him up just like that. Oh. One gulp. I've got to tell you, he tasted just wonderful. Best mouse I ever ate. Bye! With that, she yowled at the astonished Skullface. Meow! And slipped off down the corridor. Still yowling as she went. Past Skullface, past Mary and all the others, all of whom by now had come out in the corridor to see what all the fuss was about. Skullface, it seems, then stuck her head round my door, took one look into the room, slammed the door furiously behind her, and stormed off down the corridor, fulminating as she went. Children, wretched children, she fumed. If I had my way, they wouldn't be allowed in the Savoy at all. Nothing but a nuisance, a perfect nuisance. And if there's one thing I can't stand, it's a spoilt child. And an American spoilt child is the worst of all. Work of the devil himself. Running wild like that all over my hotel? How dare she? She stopped and turned round, waggling her finger at everyone. And you tell Johnny Trot when I see him that he will apologise to Lord Macaulay and polish his boots again. This time I want them nutty brown and shining, not a trace of black, and he's to come and show them to me when he returns to his lordship at once. You tell him at once. How we laughed in the corridor when she'd gone. We were doubled up and aching with it. Elizabeth, who was already a great favourite with everyone up there, had now become a matchless heroine to us all. Her quick thinking, her brazenness, and her fearlessness had saved the day, and probably my job too, and most certainly saved Kaspar from being taken away. But it was only the next day that this same fearlessness very nearly cost her life, and mine too, come to that. It was from Kaspar that I first learned something was wrong. He was always happy to see me when I came upstairs after work. He'd be lying there on his bed, his legs in the air, his tail swishing, willing me to tickle his tummy. I came back into my room to see him at about 11 o'clock, my usual time, my first work break of the morning. I was hoping Elizabeth might be there with him, but this morning she wasn't, and neither was Kaspar lying on my bed. Instead, he was pacing the room and yowling. He was in a very agitated state, leaping up and down off the windowsill. I'd seen him do this before. There was a pigeon struck him and cooing him from the parapet outside the window, but there was no pigeon. I tried feeding him, thinking this might calm him down, but he wasn't interested. Clearly nothing mattered to him except what was outside that window. So I climbed up and opened the window wide enough for me to crane my neck so I could see all the way along the narrow gully in both directions. No pigeons there either. That was when I spotted Elizabeth. I could see at once what she was trying to do. She was on her hands and knees and climbing out of the gully up onto the roof tiles. Ahead of her was a pigeon, hopping onwards on one leg towards the ridge of the roof. Its other leg hung useless. Lizzie was following it, cooing as she climbed. No, it's a poorly pigeon that she's trying to help. Cuckoo! Cuckoo! She was trying all she could do to entice it down. She seemed quite unaware of the danger she was in. Oh no, what's going to happen to Elizabeth? Right, so I'm still going with Kaspar.